We are in Forza Motorsport 7. I have not been on this game in over 2 years. I remember it being pretty bad, and this is my old nemesis. 2018 uh, Porsche 911 GTR S2. This is the cover car for Forza, and for the life of me, I could not drive it. That being said, I used to play on a TMX with a rocking chair as my chair. I didn't have a sim rig or nothing. And now I got a load cell for brake, and I'm on the Fanatec CSO Elite. So I'm not a direct drive, but it is a major upgrade from where I used to be. So I did play around with this last night, and definitely was able to remember some of the issues I had. So the question became, was it really the force feedback, or was it the physics? So I'm going to show you my force feedback settings. We'll go into options, controller, and advanced. You can see those. It keeps changing. That should be like a 15. All right. And you see vibrations at 50. Force feedback scale. Road fit should be higher than what it is. Push that up to 10 or 15. Load sensitivity at 40. So the overall aligning torque, which is a combination of mechanical and pneumatic trail. I got mechanical higher, gives me a better feel for the rear end coming out. Pneumatic tends to make the wheel light, especially when the front wheels lose traction. So I got a little bit, I still have that, so you can kind of get a feel if you're understeering, but mostly I want to make sure I have control of the rear end. Damper, I have it 5. It has a heavy effect and really, and you can see it on the telemetry. It has a telemetry screen that shows you what the force feedback is doing. Center spring scale does nothing. I think I have that 0. Dynamic damper, because my wheel damping so low, is really kind of irrelevant. I have my rear rotation. You don't see it here, but I have it maxed. This will become important at 900. My wheel's set at 1080. You do get linearity 50. I want it to be perfectly linear. But that might actually be something worth changing if I was to play more, just to get more turning angle, because one of the things I found is it barely have to move the wheel to get the car to turn compared to what I'm used to in a regular sim. Like AMS2 is what I mostly play. So I do have a comparison later for a like for like. Not this car, obviously, it's not in AMS2, but we'll get to that a little later. So let's go in. We'll get out of here, and we'll actually... I'm hitting wrong buttons here. Did I actually say... Yeah, I did say my settings. Okay. I did know I wanted... E back. Alright, there we go. There we go. We'll go into start race. I have to admit, one of the things I actually really liked, I've been to Road America, and I feel like Forza's is the only one where you really get a sense of how big the hill is when you're coming up this straight. It's total tangent. I've played a bunch of sims, and you just don't get it. Like, it just doesn't seem like the hill is that big. And I can tell you, the hill that leads to this, up this straight, holy cow, that is massive when you're there. Walking up and down it, you have to go up that hill. You're like, oh man, that's a bit of an uphill climb. But no, I don't like the fact that Forza Motorsport 7 doesn't have any sort of FOV adjustments, which a new one will. But we'll stay in cockpit here and get going. Now, one of the things I found is that initially, yeah, definitely not quite as bad. You know what? Let me turn off. I think I have the braking line on. Let me just turn that off. I don't need that. No, it's full off. Okay. We'll resume here. The braking line on this track isn't that good anyways. So initially, yeah, it feels pretty good. Definitely not quite as bad as I remember. And if I'm just driving around normally, or like leisurely, it's really not that bad. Feels pretty decent. One of the things I have noticed, though, is as you start to try and drive with anger, the lift-off oversteer is just maniacal. And also, let's see if I can get to a point where I can kind of show. You have, like, when you come off the gas, it's really difficult to trail brake in Forza. Again, you get this, like, oversteer when you come off the gas and you're just coasting. And under a stock car, that's just... And some of it has to do with the deceleration. So, is it drivable? Leisurely, yeah. But you can see how little I'm turning the wheel. And it'll become more obvious later when I do a like-for-like comparison. See, right there, you can oversteer. So, like, on a lot of cars when you're doing, in Sims, if you're doing steady-state turning, you can actually induce oversteer by oversteering the car. Found in Forza, it really wants to bring the rear end around. The kink here in this car is incredibly deadly. It really upsets cars. So we're gonna pick up speed a little bit so I can see if I can kind of demonstrate. Do a quick lap in quote-unquote anger. I gotta remember this is a road car. It doesn't have the braking of a TT3 or TTLM car. This is one of those corners that's dangerous. Like, oh, but you just see it, like the rear end started to come around. I tried to correct the, and normally if I take that corner, it's more of a lift. Of course, that's in a GT3 car, but all right, so here we go. Normally, like this first corner, incredibly difficult in this car, but so we'll brake here. And you see as I come off the brake and the gas, it just starts whining really quick. What it basically does is it puts you on edge a lot trying to drive this car. Now, for my testing last night, you can absolutely tune this out of the car with it if you upgrade it, the suspension to race suspension. The question is that really competitive if you're on a wheel compared to what a controller player do? Because the car doesn't quite behave like this with a controller. Let's see. Brake at the 3. Broke a little late. You gotta remember this is a road car, not a race car. So let's go to this one where I would normally just step off the gas. You can see the rear end wants to come around as it's coasting. And you get a little bit of this in sim racing if you have heavy engine braking, or if you, which isn't something you can adjust on Forza, or if you have, I'm trying to control the limit and feel the limit, and the car's just wanting to come around on me. Let's do a little bit of a, so I need to brake into this corner, and you can just feel, like, as soon as I get on brakes, the rear end's wanting to come around on me. It's really kind of frustrating. The car does not behave this way in Forza Horizon 5. Okay, well, that's an arcade game. It should be easier to drive. Sims are way easier to drive than this. Like in Project Cars 2 or Automobilista 2, there are cars you can control, the like power ramp, the coast ramp. which is when you come off, how much the rear locks up when you come off the gas. And Forza does, if you have the diff, you can adjust the acceleration and deceleration ramp, basically. So it is out. You can kind of tune this behavior out. Let's see if we can do this again. Let's see if I can go around this corner without. I'm afraid to trail brake because the rear end wants to come around as I get closer to coasting. So, in a sense, is it as bad as I remember? Not really. Is it good? No. I'm trying to see if I can replicate that coasting problem. Brake a little earlier. This is a road car. And you can see if I try to power your, again, the rear end's wanting to come around and I'm fighting the wheel. And this was a corner, the carousel is really, I really had some issues. I would come in here and try and do like I would on Sim. I just come off the gas, and boom, the rear end's wanting to come around. I can use the gas to kind of. So this is the RSR. It's just always on edge. The rear end's wanting to fly around, and kind of like a Porsche, you expect that rear end, especially if it's rear engine, to really slide around, like around on you and lift off oversteer. But remember, this is supposed to be a car that's tuned for the person who's going to drive it on the road. So let's get off this car real quick. We're going to leave here. Go into quit race. Okay, what are you doing? Why aren't you working? That's why. Quit race. And we are going to select car. And we are going to go to... Oh, it's not letting me change. I'm going to have to leave entirely. We're going to go to the RSR. And it felt... The RSR definitely felt better. Garage, go to Porsche. We're already at Porsche, what am I doing? And there it is. 2017 GT Team RSR, 911 RSR. We'll go in this car, because then I can, I will set this up with a comparison with AMS2. If I can get Blender to work, I'm not a great video editor. I'll see if I can get it so you can see the steering input differences between the two cars. Now let's go to back to single player, free play. I know I could have gotten the free play from there, but that's fine. We'll go back in. So yeah, lift off oversteer is just mad in this game, and you can fix it, you can tune it out, but it doesn't have the same behavior with a controller. And I'll try and kind of show that if I can. Here, I'll turn this off for the moment. Turn my controller on. So let's get out of this. From with a controller. I want to just, I'm not trying to, I just want to show how it behaves when you come off throttle with the controller. And this is on sim steering. Doesn't have that. Has that little bit of oversteer, but it doesn't come, the rear end doesn't come flinging around as much as it does when you're with the steering wheel. And part of that is because the controller automatic controls your angle based on speed and I think traction too. These aren't the best example of corners. Excuse my bad driving. I've never been good with the controller. The brake. come over the hill. Yeah, no issue controlling it. We're going to do the lift and coast through. You can definitely see I oversteered a bit, but this will be a good example. Right here. So this is about how I was going in. You can kind of control that, and you can see I'm using a lot of like up and down throttle to kind of keep the rear end under control. That wasn't very good. That board is going to be on there, so I'm going to turn my controller off. Go back to the wheel. Oh, and change modes here. There we go. And do this instead with the wheel. That's really kind of annoying using cockpit in this car because the glare thing, and you'll see this on the clip from Automobilista 2. One, this is entirely black. It should be transparent. You can even see the light coming through and changing colors on AMS 2. And this just really kind of gives you a narrow viewpoint. It's a little too low. But yeah, normally this would be you can see the car just wants to come around. And this is entirely stock, no upgrades. Other than I think it was I had to homologate it for it to allow me to use it in test drive. Now this car should be able to brake approximately where I would otherwise brake, and then probably later. We're going to go right around, yeah, just before the 3. So this isn't as bad. You would expect that with a real race car. I'm driving it in anger a little bit. Looking early. But with max settings on my steering wheel, and Forza doesn't, I think, have an automatic, you know, like ACC degree of rotation. Yeah, not too bad. This is... I wonder if I still have the tune settings I put on it to make it better. You can definitely, like I said, you can definitely tune out. This isn't too bad. I was playing around with the tuning settings, but you can see just how much the car... Bye-bye, board. Come off the gas, it just kind of wants to come around. So, is it as bad as I remember? No. And yeah, and forget the quality. This is through I'm playing literally through my capture card and listening to it in the TV, like I said earlier. I think I said that earlier. I don't know, I've had to do this twice now. Alright, we're going to give it a full... Let's try to drive this in anger. Yeah, we just wanted to come around. Yeah. Got to be a lot more cautious than I would normally be in a sim. I'm not saying I drive recklessly in a sim, but you're constantly on edge. I want to check something. Let me go here real quick. Tune setup. You can actually change it. I think this might have some of the adjustments I made. Oh yeah, it absolutely has some of the adjustments I made. So let's reset this to default. One of the adjustments I made to make this more drivable, you can see the diff settings. So deceleration was at 10. It was 41 for acceleration, and 10 for deceleration. I brought it up to 50. That really took out a lot of that, you know, coast oversteer where you come off the brake. So we're gonna, I also, because lowered the brake pressure. Forza doesn't really have a dynamic aerodynamic thing where you can brake harder with high downforce and then it reduces as you come off. It's more like a, you know, 50 to 70% braking for kind of optimal. So I lowered it to 85 so I could give it more feel from my brake. And I lowered the front and rear. I raised the rear arrow and raised the front just to make it kind of drivable like I was driving there. That wasn't too bad. The force feedback felt great. You'll see in comparison with my AMS2, like for like, how much more steering angle I was able to use. I was still, you know, on AMS2, I can trail brake really easy as I come off. I can control the rear end as I'm turning in and then give it the throttle application to really bring the rear end around to straighten the car out. That's a lot harder on Forza to do that. But, you know, the reason I bring up the default settings being such a big deal is because in Forza Motorsport 8, you have spec racing. I think spec racing is really going to be where people are at. And you're probably not going to be able to tune the cars, especially not when you're combining GT4 cars and GT3 cars, GTLM cars, GT500 cars, GT2 cars, all into one category, and they've pre-built them so that they're balanced. They're not going to let you play around with the tune settings to you know, gain an advantage under a spec series. If they do, it's going to be weird just because of the difference in the styles of cars. But here we'll reset. All right, so you can see more front arrow, less rear arrow, brakes back to 100%. The diff is now 41 on acceleration and 10% on deceleration. So let's do that, and now we'll see how the car drives. Immediately it's wanting to come around. Yep, already coming around. You'll see I came off the gas, rear end just immediately came around. It wasn't doing that when I had deceleration set to 50. And this was a real big problem corner. I just try to let the engine braking, immediately the rear end's wanting to come around. I can control the throttle, and it isn't too bad. So is it a force feedback thing, or is this a physics thing? I really want to say it's probably more the way the physics work on Forza Motorsport 7. So hopefully they get that sorted out. And I have confidence kind of that they will. I don't expect Forza Motorsport, the new one, to be a sim. I expect it to be just for it to work and be fun to play. I don't expect it to be AMS2. I don't expect it to be ATC. I mean, but yeah, you can definitely feel the difference with the default setting. Rear end just wanting to come around. Using my traditional line instead of the Forza line. But no, I was actually pleasantly surprised. So part of the problem I may have had before was the wheel. But I would definitely, it's still really hard to drive this car in anger. Or at the very limit. And you'll see the difference when I compare this to AMS2. Just how confident I am throwing the cars in the corners. This car into corners. On AMS2 compared to here. So, yep, this is, again, it's hard to feel. And given how much Forza Motorsport or Horizon 5 actually felt good on a wheel, and some of that was, they did a good job of, the arcadey version of these physics, and then the force feedback being relatively communicative. There is a weird kind of on the bubble feel with Forza Horizon at the limit, but it was at least fun, and that's really what I'm hoping for from the new Motorsport is, yeah, at least be fun. And I've talked, and we'll see. What I'll do is I'm gonna cut this off here. You've seen how I'm driving this, and then I'll try to record like a decent lap with this car, and then we can compare, and then I'll try to do like a side-by-side with how it did with Automobilista too. So, you've been with me this long. Thanks for listening, and no, I probably will not be jumping back into Forza Motorsport, but I am looking forward in just a day and a half, and Forza Motorsport goes the new one goes live, and we will find out if they really did improve the steering enough that cars are raceable out of the box, and that's really going to be important with spec. Open class, like in Forza 7, you can definitely tune the cars so that they are drivable with the wheel. They're not necessarily competitive with the types of tunes controller players use. Very different style of tuning, and controller has a massive advantage, I would say, in Forza Motorsport, based on how you can tune the cars, because it's just easier with a steering wheel or with a controller to take advantage of the way the car rotates on coasting in a way that's very difficult to do with the wheel. And some of that has to do with how it sets the steering angle for you, especially if you're on normal steering. It's even easier, but the sim steering is, a lot of the top guys are using sim steering. I've rambled on long enough. Let's do the comparison, and see you later. Bye. There we go. Finally got a decent lap. Took me 13. In the comparison with the AMS2 one, I do like a 201, and I attack way more confidently than I do here. Some of it's, you know, just a difference in the physics and the way the cars perform. So the track's probably not, might be a bit long, who knows. But either way, I was able to finally put together a decent lap. This is with my tune. So, you know, decel and acceleration are at 50-50, made it a lot more controllable on throttle and off throttle and on the transition. Whether that's the fastest way to do it, I'm going to bet like a top controller player is probably doing like a 205 or something like that. But a little bit of aero in the back, a little less on the front, and it's definitely made it way more controllable. But you can you'll definitely, you know, when we compare the wheels, even with this being tuned up a little bit to make it drivable on a wheel, and it goes to show that some of it's the physics, not the actual force feedback. Though there is an issue I have with like how little steering input. It's just like, okay, I've got to like barely turn the wheel to get this thing to go in the rear end to want to come around. So a little bit, but again, is that the physics or is that the force feedback? The force feedback really like wasn't too bad on the communication, especially like around the carousel, right? Once I got the accel and decel where I could handle it, I could actually kind of hold it right there on the limit a bit without the rear end flying around on me. So there we go. Have a good day.